Say a team pulled out a Venture Moira strat. What chances of winning would you think they have? Last weekend, to qualify for the last spot in the Esports World Cup, Team Falcons went head to head with ZETA, and let's just say it wasn't that close. One of the specific strats ZETA seemed to have was this has Venture comp on the new Atlas map. So what went wrong? Firstly, we need to understand the matchup ZETA have against the BAP Sojourn on Falcons. By far, the most obvious difference between the two comps is the range. Moira has worse range than Baptiste, Venture's got worse range than Sojourn, and Hazard has worse range than Ramatra. Now, let me be clear, this does not automatically mean that ZETA's comp is always fast, because they can use that mobility to play slow and back up. Something that we'll talk about later. Now, if you watched my number 1 Venture video, you'll already know that one of their greatest strengths is zoning backlines. And combined with Tracer, that's something that we immediately see in the first fight. The Sojourn Lucio on the side of Falcons need to back up and move away, which consequently leaves Hanbin alone on the front line. With that being said, I think Fielder just hasn't played Atlas yet because he seems surprised that he can't heal his Ramatra. Thankfully for ZETA, a nice drill dash by Pelican alongside some help by Bernard leads to the kill. Unfortunately, Finn gets traded in the mid-fight. Let's look at why. Firstly, Finn tries to bounce a heal up off the floor, forgetting that there is no ceiling on this part of Atlas. I genuinely tried my hardest to not laugh when I first saw this. Secondly, Finn tries to clear proper on the Tracer, which isn't necessarily a mistake in of itself. The mistake is that the rest of his team aren't wanting to clear the Tracer, they're wanting to push forwards. Again, on flex support, I've talked about whether you want to out-rotate or clear flankers based on what the rest of your team is doing, and clearly, out-rotating is the choice. Despite that, Alpha E on the Lucio catches Fielder, who's a bit too late to help his tank. Now, while we're on the topic of Moira, I do want to grill Finn at least a tiny bit. In fairness, Kiriko was banned, but it's not an excuse for bad play. Here, when Merit pops the overclock towards the end of first points, Finn matches with the Coalescence, which is fine, but he's so tunnel visioned on healing Alfie that he forgets the Sojourn entirely, feeding on Moira and dying first yet again, which ultimately means that Falcons win the first point, and Finn temporarily goes Baptiste for the next points. Now, one of the most important roles in both comps is held by the Tracer, who, of course, both have very different jobs. The Tracer on Falcons wants to prevent and disrupt the staging of ZETA's Tracer, otherwise his BAP Sojourn aren't going to live a Venture Hazard Tracer dive. The main time you'll see proper deviate from this playstyle is to look for a pulse bomb on backlines. Conversely, Flora wants to connect with the backline with as little resistance as possible, and to be honest, Falcons get the better of two ends. You can see here how Flora just gets permanently hunted down by the majority of ZETA. It's only a beat from Alpha Yi that allows Flora to not even bother with staging and just reach for the backline. Back on first point as well, Merit chops off Flora's head in the pre-fight, which looks unlucky until you realise that Flora saw Merit beforehand, yet still chose to peek the angle for some reason. Bro did not watch the Capitology video. Now, there is one thing you can do to outplay what Falcons are doing, which is to take angles or splits later into the fight, mainly because there's just less time to force you out and you might not even notice. When Flora gets forced out, look at how much earlier he is to the fight compared to the rest of his team. Comparatively, here, when ZETA are actually pushing back in, Flora and Pelican are basically in perfect setup positions. Another thing you can do is get supports. Venture or Lucio can help you 2v1 their Tracer, and conversely, Proper can do and did the exact same thing by staying in his backline's LOS to force out Flora. One of the most important factors to consider in these general brawl comps is the push and pull, which is better shown than told. In this fight, Finn pushes with the Coalescence. This causes Falcons to pull back a bit, soon beating afterwards to push back in. This then causes Alfie to layer his beat on top so his team can keep pushing forwards. You can kinda draw a diagram like this to show how the ults move, and generally, if you are the team with the ult advantage, you play for this push and pull. If not, you might want to do a chaotic, fast, unpredictable play. In fact, we see ZETA adopt that kind of mindset in the fight after, where they have the ult deficits. So, it's not shocking to see Flora go for a pulse play, killing Chio. Though unfortunately, he's 1 second off his recall, causing him to die. Might be the first time that I've seen this change cause a fight loss. Despite that, Falcons are forced to dump their entire ult bank just to win this fight, giving ZETA an edge for the retouch. This is where we get into tempo misconceptions. When I previously showed you the comps, you probably thought the Venture comp is supposed to play fast, whereas the BAP comp is supposed to play slow. This is a gross oversimplification, and this fight shows you why. Because Finn can charge the Coalescence in the mid-fight, and because Falcons can't respond to it, ZETA should be playing slow to charge the Coalescence. Instead, ZETA are heavily focused on diving the Baptiste, meaning both the Lucio and Venture get caught in the process. So, when Finn just about gets his Coalescence, it's already too late. I don't see why you couldn't just stall the point with literally the best stall character in the game, and your Tracer can ping pong the objective with your Hazard 2, and the Moira can now just clear the Tracer so Alfie doesn't get pulsed. Speaking of when to play fast though, this fight is certainly one of them. You really don't want to give time for Chio to farm beats, so you can play fast. Thankfully, as well, Flora is uncontested too and hits the pulse bomb, so this should be an easy fight win, right? Well, Pelican gets chunked heavily at the start of his excavates, dying soon after. This in part causes Alfie to be on top, which wasn't needed if Pelican didn't die. Honestly, it's just a slight timing issue. Bernard should be leaping in first to draw all the aggro, so Pelican can freely excavate. Before I continue, if you want to climb at the game, check out my Spalo-approved coaching down below. Now, next fight, you only have one option. Try and force beat with cooldowns and then pop your spikes afterwards, hoping that it hits something. Annihilation isn't that big of a concern, and the window is useless when you're actually being dove. Thankfully, ZETA pretty much do that. Bernard forces beats, spiking both the Lucio and Cassidy afterwards, and from a top-down view, everybody looks in place to do some follow-up. Maybe Flora is a touch too late, but nothing crazy. However, the one exception to that is Finn, who gets so caught up in dueling proper that he fades away from the rest of the fight, becoming useless. Of course, in hindsight, the best fade was somewhere probably to the coast side to both avoid the Tracer and actually heal your team. Now, because Falcons need to stall, the Annihilation becomes a very valuable ultimate that swings this fight. But of course, now with the Coalescence and no real answer to it, you'd expect ZETA to win this fight. No, they do not. Because of how early and eager Finn wants to push for the Coalescence, it really screws up the timing of ZETA's DPS. Flora goes a tad bit too early, getting his recall forced out, meanwhile Pelican is too late, borrowing absolutely nothing. If they just chilled for a moment and waited out the window, maybe Pelican's got the time to actually catch the Bapcast, or Bernard has the time to take the brunt of the aggro so Flora doesn't get forced early. I will say the map does play a small part in this too. The open space is not fun to cross, and it makes this rush a lot harder compared to some of their previous ones. As a quick aside, beat rushing the enemy team when they haven't got beat is generally a free fight win. Lastly, I do want to quickly cover some less normal perk choices. Chio on Falcons has the Accelerando perk, whereas Alfie on ZETA has the wider amp radius. This kinda makes sense. Because everyone on ZETA is gonna be a bit split when they go for the rush, a wider amp can help cover and reach them. Meanwhile, Chio just needs to out-rotate and speed his backline away, so he doesn't need a wider amp radius. Pelican also has the Covered in Dirt perk instead of having the better range on Venture. Again, this makes sense. You're not playing for range, so having the extra shields can help you live engages. What I really don't like though is Finn choosing the Contamination perk instead of Ethical Nourishment. Clearly he didn't watch my #1 Moira video, where having that 50 instant burst healing makes dueling and living a lot easier. Considering Tracer was a constant annoyance, Ethical Nourishment can help you both out-rotate or clear her. So in short, I don't actually have any issue with ZETA's slightly off-meta comp, especially on this map. It just seems that at least some of the time, they're not on the same page. Whether that's Flora getting cleared early, Finn just having multiple bruh moments, and a very close third points that came down to a Tracer nerf and playing a bit too fast. As always, click the video on screen if you enjoyed. Just so you know, the script was a bit rushed because replays were going to get cleared, but yeah, is what it is. Until next time.